The Batman released this past weekend. One of the biggest openings for DC, the biggest opening of 2022 so far, directed by Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves has directed the Planet of the Apes movies. He directed the second and third ones, which the whole trilogy is fantastic.
Yeah.
Great trilogy. Also did Let Me In, a horror movie that I highly suggest.
Yeah.
And then Cloverfield, which I feel like people forget he did Cloverfield.
People think J.J. Abrams directed everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think a majority of people think J.J. Abrams directed.
This is a new Batman. Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz playing Catwoman, Selena Kyle, Paul Dano playing the Riddler, Jeffrey Wright playing, which I'm excited to talk about, Jeffrey Wright playing Commissioner Gordon, Andy Serkis plays Alfred, Colin Farrell, Kendrick doesn't believe it. Colin Farrell plays a
No, not him.
Transformative acting performances you'll ever see in a comic book movie. Plays Oswald Cobblepot plays Penguin, John Turturro plays Carmine Falcone, and a couple other people in here, Peter Sarsgaard, a few actors people may recognize, some bit actors as well, and actresses. But the Batman, decent length, 2 hours and 40 minutes, almost 3 hours, 45 minutes. We'll talk about that. I think that factors in a bit. I think we all, for the most part, probably enjoyed it on the same level, though. This is a noir crime thriller. If you just didn't have costumes and capes, this would just be like it. They could very easily make this not a Batman movie, right? It's like really simple to do that. It's very Zodiac killer vibes. It's like Zodiac. In his second year of fighting crime, Batman uncovers corruption in Gotham City that connects to his own family while facing a serial killer known as the Riddler. The start of a franchise, it seems, has high critic scores, I think like 85-ish% of Rotten Tomatoes, but in the 90s for audience. I really liked it. I've seen it twice. Final score 93 out of 100 for me. That's very high up for comic book movies. I think some people may be surprised to hear that. I've given 2 movies over a 95 or above ever for comic book movies, but this is now top 5 comic book movie of all time for me. Number 1 being The Dark Knight, which I don't know how The Dark Knight is ever going to be beat. The greatest paced movie of all time, The Dark Knight.
Agreed. Yes.
It is just like a tour de force of that movie. You don't breathe. Into the Spider-Verse 96, and then Logan 93, the Batman 93, and then Infinity War and Endgame are tied for me, though I would bump Endgame above Infinity War. I do prefer it. So yeah, I love the Batman. I think it is a little clunkier in the third act. I think it maybe could have used being a little tighter and like punching a little harder consistently at the end. I think had it done that, we're looking at maybe the best comic book movie ever made, or at least close to Dark Knight. I truly think like had it been a little tighter in spots, it really could have been up there because there are some awesome performances. I don't know. It's hard not to call him like maybe the best Batman. Like Robert Pattinson is so awesome in that role.
Yeah.
I think Matt Reeves just does such a damn good job here. It's it's scary in parts. Like there's a couple parts, and we'll get into it, and like we spoil things, but like there's parts where it's like, they're not going to do that, and they do it, and you're like, oh shit, like this movie's a little terrifying. It's like really creepy, but also again, I don't want to spoil it, but it also could have. How do I say this without spoiling it? This movie really could have just like leaned too heavily into being dark, right? Where you're like, all right, like this is too emo and dark, but then end of the movie, you were like, oh shit, like they actually kind of like it's one of the more positive Batman movies as well, oddly enough. I just think Matt Reeves did such a good job at developing this movie, and I'm amped to see more of it. There are so many great roles, so many great characters. And the last thing I'll say, and I'll throw it to Ken Jack, what's one of the hardest things to do in a comic book movie? A lot of characters, a lot of villains, and somehow juggling them. This movie does it perfectly. That never is a problem in this movie. There's never a point where like there's too many people. There are so many people that they focus on, and you, at least for me, I never had a moment going, there's too many people in this movie. Never at any point. Flows well, like I said. Only reason it's not maybe higher, I think it's a little clunkier towards the third act, but I do think it finishes. I think it sticks its landing, but maybe a little wonky on the way down. But the Batman. I would say met and exceeded expectations. I was quite thrilled with it. 93 out of 100.
Yeah, I ended up on a 91 out of 100. And I think you hit on two good points, which is the fact that they were able to keep it very dark without getting too lethal, which is obviously something which is a big point of contention for Batman. And the fact that they were able to, or at least Matt Reeves was able to like kind of divvy out the characterization well throughout all the characters. And part of that you can attribute to the runtime because it is long, but that it paid off in a sense because you were able to get this characterization out of all of these people. And you got like a different one than you're used to for basically every single one, which is awesome. And I think for me watching this movie, something that it always sticks out for me is when we interviewed Zack Snyder and he talked to us about how it would be crazy for DC to try and replicate the Marvel formula, right? And like I think that applies obviously in the direct sense here, but I think you could also expand it to say to how it would have been crazy for this movie to try and replicate the formula of what made The Dark Knight such a success.
Right.
And I think that's something that we're all worried about is like you can't try to make The Dark Knight again. It's just not going to work. And I'm very happy that Matt Reeves, he didn't do that. He very clearly didn't. He gave us a version of live action Batman that I don't think we've ever seen before. Like, you know, the detective, the practical crime fighter, not the crazy gizmo guy that fails upwards into beating the bad guy. And, you know, he fucks up and like, he knows he can't be everywhere at once and he loses a lot, this Batman, and he's way more just like human. And I think it was basically everything I wanted it to be. And I'm super, super thrilled with the result. It was just how all of it kind of worked out. Like there was so many fears going into this, like how this runtime is crazy. How is Pattinson going to work as Batman? How are they going to do all these characters? How are they going to like turn this into a detective story? And he did all of it basically flawlessly. My points off would definitely come in that the runtime definitely felt gratuitous at points. Like they could have like shaved off definitely probably 20 minutes off this movie without like hurting it too bad. But like, there's no scene from this movie where I'm like, wow, they really should have cut that. Or wow, they really could have gone without that. Like pretty much every scene was like, it was purposeful. It was necessary. And like, maybe if you, the answer to that question is like, you fix the pacing a little bit to try and make it feel a little more smooth in the way that like, for example, the Nolan movies felt like it's just a nonstop, like very continuous and synergistic flow. But other than that, man, loved it. Love the way they shot the action in this. Love the what do you call it? The mounted shots that they did where they put the camera on the car, they put the camera on Batman's suit when he jumps. Like all of those are so cool. And a lot of other, I just think really interesting sort of takes on the Batman universe. And I'm not a comic book reader, but I really like the way they handled Alfred, really like the way they handled Jim Gordon in this, and Thomas Wayne. I think the way they handled him was awesome. And that again might be something with the comics I just don't know. But I thought it was really, really cool and very humanizing for a character that was like, we always view, at least in Batman, as like this one-dimensional holy figure.
Well, quick one for Robbie because then I want to ask a devil's advocate question for you, Ken Jack. Is Martha Wayne, is she in Arkham in many comics, any or?
So I believe she is in some comics. I don't think that's her like overall. I don't think in every comic she's always in Arkham, but I do think that was pulled from a comic somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I didn't know about that. Ken, I'll ask a devil's advocate, then we'll get to Robbie. Do you think, and this doesn't bother me, do you think it was too Batman Begins-ish? Because it is like there are a lot of parallels to Batman Begins in terms of like how it's set up. I don't know if did that bother you? You said like they didn't try to replicate The Dark Knight, but was it too similar to Batman Begins in any spots? Like, I don't know. That doesn't bother me, but I've seen people say that.
That's something where I thought it was pretty good too. Like, I don't think that they kind of fell into the origin story trap, which is like they do that in almost the beginning of any comic book franchise. I think they did a really good job of just like throwing you straight into the action because like we know who Batman is, right? Yeah. All of us know this shit. We know we don't have to see the fucking like the shooting scene with Joe Chill for the 5,000th time. We don't need to see that part, any of this shit. Like this background is him with like the bat in the well and all that. Like we know about Batman. We all know. So many people listen to The Dark Knight. It's crazy. Like everyone knows this shit. And I like how they trusted the audience to not express it. And like they trusted us to know this. And I think that it really benefited the movie in a huge way.
I agree with that. I feel like they
and then you can throw your score, Robbie, as well. You can do
I would honestly go like Dark Knight would be like a perfect 100 for me. That's my favorite movie ever. So this I would probably go 95. I tweeted that I think after just one viewing of the Batman, I would probably put it as number 2 on my overall like Batman movie rankings. And I think they did a good job of, whereas like in Batman Begins, and that is, by the way, my favorite Batman origin story. I feel like the origin story told in that movie is like even better than some of the ones told in the comics and Mask of the Phantasm, whatever. So in Batman Begins, he like goes and learns all martial arts and he learns how to fight with the League of Shadows. And then he becomes Batman and he's pretty fucking good at being Batman right away. In this, they just throw you right into the universe. Like you said, you don't need to know that his parents get shot. We all know that. Everyone knows that. My mom knows that. My grandma knows. Everyone in the world knows Batman's origin story. So they throw you into what feels like a lived universe. It feels like they could have made like a Batman movie before this, and this is the sequel, because they just assume you know the dynamic with Alfred, the dynamic with Gordon. And it's my favorite dynamic that they've ever showed with Gordon. It's a lot of Gordon and Batman actually working together in this movie, which I thought was awesome. And like Ken Jack said, it's the detective stuff that comic book fans have been looking for forever. And even in The Dark Knight, my favorite movie ever, you get a lot of Bruce Wayne, you get a lot of Rachel Dawes, you get a lot of like stuff that distracts from Batman the detective. And they don't distract from it at all in this. They're like, we're making a fucking Batman movie. And it's like picking up a comic. If you pick up The Long Halloween, you're not reading that and being like, wait a minute, where does this come from? What's the beginning? Who is this? It's just throwing you into a Batman story, and it's a badass Batman story. I do agree the length is a bit long and people are picking apart the ending. I didn't hate the ending. I liked a lot of parts about it, but the quote unquote fourth act feels clunky. People were calling it that. And I was like, yeah, that kind of sounds right. The fourth act, like all of the stuff after what feels like the story's kind of wrapped up. But yeah, this is everything I wanted it to be, exceeded my expectations, and I can't wait to see it again. I want to see it in Dolby. I want to see it in IMAX. I want to see it in every format that I possibly can, because the Michael Giacchino score, I don't know if that's how you actually say his last name, Giacchino, tremendous. The way that it was shot.
Score so good.
There were some scenes where Batman's coming out of the shadows, and I said in my mom's basement, I was like, hey, it kind of seemed like Darth Vader coming out of the hallway in Rogue One. Like, it was like terrifying. Like, Batman was actually scary to the villains. And then I look it up, and it's the same guy that shot Rogue One. He shot Dune, Rogue One, Zero Dark 30, a couple episodes of Mandalorian. Like, they assembled not only a super cast, which is probably my favorite cast in any Batman movie. John Turturro stunned me at how much I loved him as Falcone. But they assembled like a super team of behind the scenes people as well. So yeah, I can't say enough great things about the Batman.
And I want to note something too, and then I'll let you, and Chris, you can kind of roll off this into your score and review. But I mentioned it is, I think, the best live action Gotham that we've ever seen. Yeah. I think it is. You know what it felt like? And I don't know how to like morph this into like a take that this is proof that you can make like a good video game movie, but it felt like an open world video game. Like, it felt like this
like the Arkham games
landscape that was like, I don't know, like it's hard to explain, but I think if you've seen it, you can kind of know what I'm talking about. It just felt so immersive in that Gotham, and it had the perfect blend between like the Tim Burton ridiculousness of Gotham, but also the realism of Christopher Nolan. It never had too much New York or too much Chicago. Like, it kind of a mix of both, but it was just like this perfect balance. And I loved the Gotham was so good in this movie. Chris, I know you liked it, but to the levels of what?
I have it in an 86. I really like this movie a whole lot. Would not be shocked if it makes my top 10 at the end of the year. There are so many things about it that I not just liked, but like, goddamn, just loved. And it starts with, they got Batman right. This is such an amazing, amazing interpretation of the character. And a lot of the things this movie gets right is the fact that, it just corrects a lot of what previous iterations have done wrong. You guys have interviewed Zack Snyder, and he seems like a lovely, lovely man, and he works hard on his movies. That version of Batman, I just do not vibe with and never will. Him shooting people in the face, not a fan of that. And his whole
they don't reference Zack Snyder, but you get the Batman guns and killing.
Like, don't worry.
And his whole explanation, I don't want to make this about him, but his whole explanation when they're like, why did Batman kill people, is like, well, you just like don't live in the real world, because like that's what a guy like. I'm not going to get mean, but I'm really glad that they fixed that. Okay. And Pattinson, I think, is amazing in this. Like, legitimately, it won't happen, but I think as an actor, this is actual true performing, like something that under different circumstances, you'd look at and think maybe this is like an Oscar caliber performance. Truly, I think that guy does so much acting with his face. The first scene that was released, the funeral scene, there's just moments he doesn't say anything in that entire sequence. And he's able to give entire monologues, tell entire stories just with his eyes. And obviously when he's in the bat suit, the voice is perfect. It's the choreography, the fighting is perfect. I love that he has gadgets, but it's not, we're going to see him grow there. But really in this, it's just kind of, we don't even see him really use a batarang. It's mainly just the grappling gun and his fists. I love that this is a Batman still learning how to be Batman. The movie looks amazing.
Like when he flies, he crashed, right? Like you referenced,
yeah,
it was cool when he
was
flying, and they did like almost like the GoPro shot of him flying.
Yeah, that was sick, man. It was so cool. The mounted cameras, man, they were so good in this.
I can't believe we've gone this far without bringing this up. Was that not one of the greatest car chases ever in a movie?
Yes,
one of the greatest.
I'll just say this now. We're transitioning.
I want that theater shaking.
Yeah,
let's transition to full spoilers now. But the chase scene is, for me, and I'll let you elaborate on it, Chris, you brought it up. I think it's legitimately top 5 best comic book movie scenes I've ever seen.
Yeah,
and I don't think that'll be a hyperbole in a year, 2, 3 years from now. Like it is from the music to the look of it, it is amazing.
And one thing Matt Reeves' movies are great at. The Apes movies are like that. Cloverfield was like that. The sound design. This is something I'd rarely bring up, but in all of his movies, man, like you said, Robbie, that theater was shaking, dude. And Reeves said he wanted the Batmobile to feel like something that could be in a horror movie, like Christine or something like that. And when that thing revs up, I've never seen a car do this. The car literally roars when you hear it, when it pulls up. And I like the way they use it. That's really the only scene that it's in. It's in one other. He pulls up next to Gordon in another scene. Besides that, that's really the only Batmobile scene that we get in the movie. There's so many, and yeah, you guys brought up Colin Farrell. I got like Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin vibes, where it's like, I think he just showed up on set every day and went, I am having so much fun doing this. And it's so weird that he, in the early 2000s, went through a period where he got like overexposed and a lot of people didn't like him. He's made a lot of really cool career choices and he's so much fun.
Yes.
And I can't wait. I
can
cannot
go from like, did he do this and then the lobster? It's like, yeah, you can.
And he even had that movie. I haven't seen it yet, but that movie After Yang, which opened the same weekend as this. He's become a very versatile actor.
Did you think he was in Survive going into this movie? Because I actually did not think he was in Survive, and I'm insanely pleased.
Wait, Survive in this movie?
Dunzo.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they announced the spinoff, so I was pretty.
That's true, but I didn't know if that would be like, prequel or something. Yeah.
I'm glad it's not though, because now like that series picking up where this movie left off with him is way more interesting. Like the power vacuum thing.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. Obviously, we're in spoilers now, but the big scene at the end, what it's setting up. But real quick, before we get into that, I do have a few complaints. It is long, and really, like you brought up, probably the fourth act, it does kind of drag. And the finale itself, while not bad, it's no Dark Knight Rises or Batman Begins in the way that those movies ended, or The Dark Knight with just this huge punch. Not quite there with this movie. Really, the biggest issue I had is Paul Dano, I think, is brilliant as the Riddler, and the character design and the voice. Some of the traps, man, the movie's legitimately scary at certain points. But his whole plan it's kind of confusing and kind of filled with a lot of coincidences, especially near the end. I'm still not completely sure what he was trying to do. And over time, I could see myself liking it more. I know people are going to say that I'm making it seem like a big complaint. It's not. I think this is an excellent movie. And in comparison to other comic book movies we've seen, and we all liked No Way Home a lot, but the big problem I have with that movie and with all three of those movies, I don't think they're well directed at all. I think they have some really lame. Yeah, like I don't want to get into it, but here, man, this movie looks so good. Like this is what comic book movies should look like. It's not made by a freaking computer. It's a guy who they flipped a car and they actually shot a Batmobile flying through fire. That's awesome. So even despite the flaws, the faults that I have with it, it absolutely is worthy of people's support. And the last point I'll make, because I know I'm rambling, but the last point I'll make is I think they're going to get better than this. I think what they're building towards, similar to Batman Begins transitioning to The Dark Knight, what they're setting up here, this universe, I think is going to be something that is iconic. And I bet much like Batman Begins after the Dark Knight. I bet we look back on this more fondly than we did even now because we're going to see what they're building up to. So I am so amped for the universe Matt Reeves is building here. And despite the few flaws that I have, I'm really glad it did well. And I think that I think people in general are going to love this thing. And I love it.
Yeah, I think the end of it, I think the end of it, like you said, it's a little clunky, but for me, what kind of made it work was that it was very positive at the end. Like there's hope with this Batman. Like there's skepticism, but there's that bit of hope, which again, that's very similar to what you get at the end of The Dark Knight, in Batman Begins. But like, there's always this thing. It's like DC's dark. It's like this is darker shit. But like, just you can be dark like this. But you can also have like a kind of positive end to it, and like a looking forward for the character where it's not just this. And he's an emo. He's an emo Batman. He's an emo Bruce Wayne. Actually, he's a very emo Bruce Wayne. But like there's a positive way this movie wraps. And I think that kind of saved, like you said, of a little rigid ending. Not bad by any means, but I don't think it's unfortunately, if you're looking for a perfect ending, that's just not what you're going to get. But even then, like I also like to the point of like this type of Batman, I'm glad that he's still not a perfect Batman at the end of it. Like I would have really disliked that had he like struggled on a movie, then like he just kind of gets it right. Like he still almost loses in the end. He has to hit the nos, right? He has to he supercharged.
Which was that a tease for Venom in the future, like Bane?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, right. Like
very true.
Like, I love like he still had to do that. Like he had multiple bad, like he had things go wrong that kind of saved him at the end. Or said that he was kind of saved at the end by other characters. Had to pull a thing off his chest to save people from being electrocuted in the water. Also, you want to talk about two amazing shots? Him leading the people through the water at the bottom of Gotham Square Garden.
One of my favorite shots in the movie.
The shot we saw in the trailer of him upside down shot of him walking out of the Batmobile.
Yeah, dude,
on fire.
So
in theater, that was so fucking cool. That was like a goosebump moments.
Yeah, it was, which is crazy because I will say this: the trailers for this movie showed way too much shit.
Yeah,
yes,
way too much stuff. The fact that you saw the Paul Dano Riddler in the coffee shop with the Riddler question mark.
Yeah, man. Why did they do that?
See, that's one of those things where like. We watch trailers. This is what we do. Like, this is our job. Like, we talk about this in a podcast. I'm not going to stop watching big trailers, but I'm like, man, like, I wish I hadn't seen that because I knew that was coming.
You're
like,
looking for the scene.
Yeah.
You're actively
The
looking
whole
for,
time
is this when that
looking
scene
for it.
is coming? Yeah.
They even
Yeah,
had the
that's-
flood
I mean,
in the
that is-
trailer. I was waiting
Yeah.
for the flood.
Yeah. Me too.
Right. Like, that's not like, it doesn't take me, I don't take any points off the movie at all for that. But I'm like, man, that was one of the first things I said to Robbie and Kenji. Like, I was like, he's like, damn, like, I really wish we hadn't seen a couple of those things. But to that point, like the fact I still got goosebumps from the thing of like the shot of him walking out of the Batmobile, even though we'd seen that shot for almost a year now, like that's a testament to how badass that was.
I got goosebumps from the scene where he walks out from the shadows and beats the shit out of the dudes.
Yeah.
He says like, I'm vengeance. Like
Yeah.
that scene was so cool, even though we'd already seen it. And like, I loved everything about that and everything about the action that he did in this, because I think that maybe my biggest complaint about the Nolan trilogy was like the hand-to-hand combat was kind of lame. And like the hand-to-hand combat in this was fucking stellar. It was so cool. And there's a couple of like you guys are mentioning before, things that I think we haven't seen in comic books in a long time. That car chase, man, unfucking believable,
amazing,
real. That was one of the best car chases I've seen in years, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that it was so practical. And like that's something that you see in movies like older movies like Bullet or like Blues Brothers, whatever, where they use practical effects and like have cars fucking exploding and stuff instead of it being CGI. And like it pays off. It pays off so much because it looks so real and you feel engrossed into what's happening. I love that. And I think there's one other thing in spoilers that I'd love to touch on, which is just that the way that they handled Thomas Wayne. And I think that the way, and again, I mentioned this before, if it's part of the comics, like I just don't know them. But the fact that they made him this more flawed person who made this huge mistake and like accidentally basically ordered a hit on someone, like I think that was so smart because you give Batman a legitimate conundrum regarding his father, because he's only ever been like Thomas Wayne to us, like someone who's been like one-dimensional, super fucking good, never did a bad thing in his entire life, like the patron of Gotham or whatever. And like now you see like he's a person, he's a human like everyone else, and like he's a person who made mistakes trying to protect his family. And I think that they that added a good layer to Batman's story and his like kind of like kind of being in that sort of gray area between good and evil, because like, yeah, he's beating the shit out of criminals, but like he's doing it like illegally, essentially. He's a vigilante. Like it adds like a good layer of depth to him. I really love that about it as well. And man, Robbie, I know you want to talk about that relationship between Gordon and fucking Batman, because that performance of Jeffrey Wright by Gordon, which is extremely just an exaggerated version of Jeffrey Wright.
I said he's doing an impression. Jeffrey Wright's doing an impression of himself, somebody doing a Jeffrey Wright impression.
But he's so cool. That's
it's
the coolest
Batman man the whole time. Oh, come on, man.
It's so whispering. It's like the most.
Gotta catch the
voice, Ken Jack.
Gotta catch the Riddler, Batman. Every time.
Also, and yeah, Robbie, you can talk about that, but I want to kind of tie into it. Is that's another thing of like there's that DC thing. It's like, it's too fucking serious, man. Batman says fuck. It's like, you don't have to, like, and I love Pete, by the way, Peacemaker finale. Oh my God. By the way, the Aquaman is just, and the Flash is so good, but you don't have to go full Peacemaker. You don't have to go full the Suicide Squad or Shazam. You can have, like, there aren't many jokes in this movie, but the relationship between Gordon and Batman and the cops, like, it supplies like this little lighter hearted, like, realism. It's like, all right, let's take it down from like this super serious thing. And it is perfect. Like it balances the tone perfectly, where it's not too much. Where you're like, Jesus Christ, like this is too serious, but it gives you some levity and some humor. So yeah, their chemistry was fantastic.
And one of I would say the hardest I laughed, and there's not like a lot of funny lines, but was the clip they show where Batman punches Gordon in the face on purpose. And Gordon comes back up and he goes, "You could have pulled that punch." Batman just goes, "I did."
Yeah, so good. That's like Matt Reeves right there. That's their relationship.
Right. Well, Matt Reeves brought up the fact that Batman's sense of humor comes from the fact that he has no sense of humor. Like he's just so straight laced all the time. So to have a little back and forth like that, I thought was perfect. Another guy that we haven't brought up yet, who's not in the movie a lot, but who added a different take to this character that I thought was awesome, was Andy Serkis. I thought we've never had a bad Alfred, by the way. Like every Alfred's been great. Even Jeremy Irons, like I thought was excellent. But I loved, and to me, Michael Caine is like the ultimate Alfred. Like nothing will ever top that. Like this is, I will say, this is the second best reason why Andy Serkis is connected to a ventilator, though. We all know the best reason is definitely from Batman Forever, or Batman and Robin, when he has what's it called? What's the disease?
Like bonitis or something.
It was McGregor's. It turned out to be McGregor's syndrome.
Yes, yeah, McGregor's syndrome. Yes. That's right.
And Alfred CDs. Yeah, that's one of
Alfred CDs. That's right.
I love the fact that it's clear this Alfred, like this is the only Alfred I think has probably killed a person. Like he seems like clearly there's, he's had a past, but I love the fact that in other versions, that relationship was so loving. Like it was, every so often they would be contentious, but you get the impression at the beginning of the movie that these two, like, they might not even really like each other that much. Like Alfred is really fed up with them. I mean, their opening scene, they're kind of bickering with each other. I thought that was really neat. When you're doing different interpretations of the character, you have to do things that we haven't seen before. I loved their dynamic. I thought he seemed like I want to see a miniseries. I think technically they already made one, but a series about like where Alfred came from, because it seems like it's implied he was the one who kind of trained Batman in this universe. I'm like, wow, that's pretty dope. I really like.
Go watch Pennyworth.
I know, people do like Pennyworth. Yeah, it's based on the same comic of like interpretation of Alfred, which is the Earth One interpretation, where Alfred was like in the British military, and then he worked security for the Waynes for a while, and then he like eventually made his way into that butler role. But I agree. I said to Clem, imagine in the future, like a future movie, we see a villain break into Wayne Manor or some shit, and Alfred just fucks them up. Like that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Michael Gough, by the way, the late Michael Gough did play a great Alfred.
And he made it through like the Burton and Schumacher ones.
Yeah.
Him and Gordon were the only two that did that, right? I think they had the same Commissioner Gordon as well.
Right. Who sucked. Yeah. I always hated Pat Gordon.
Oh, I liked him.
Oh, I thought he was
bad Gordon.
Especially
the other people. I thought Zoe Kravitz was really great as well. She's perfect for that role. Badass. Her just like trapezing down the fire escape to get on the bikes. Like I thought she was awesome.
And her fighting style too. Like she was using her feet as much as she was using her punches. It was like a cat fighting. Like she fought like a cat on its back. Yeah, the claws were cool. Yeah.
Claws too,
And I loved her hat. It was the beanie that the creases made cat ears, almost like Anne Hathaway with the goggles making the cat ears.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. I thought she was solid. I thought Paul Dano was good. I will say Paul Dano a little underutilized, but I think that's not like that's I guess the consequence of doing the Riddler like a masked character. Now, I mean, it was him, obviously, but I like you can't really, if you do more of it, you kind of break the mysteriousness of the character, right? Like that's just kind of how it goes. Andy Serkis said was good. I like Jeffrey Wright, but I will say I think my favorite side role is John Turturro as Carmine Falcone. I thought he was so good in that role. He was the perfect mix of like, dang, I think I would like this guy. I think he would dupe me, but he's also horrifying at the same. He's a terrifying presence. Him just playing pool, I love that. Also, the pool cues seemed a little short. I will note that. I think it's because they didn't want to bash the windows out while they were filming it. That's one little thing. But I thought
take a point off. Short pool cues.
Yeah, pool cues too. Bizarrely short. That's a Seinfeld. Kramer does that. He puts holes in the wall to properly use pool cues. But I thought
lens, by the way, was
awesome.
cool tech. That was cool tech. The contact lens thing that they gave her in that club scene was very cool tech.
That's from the comics. That's from Scott Snyder's run, The Court of Owls, which everyone loves. People want to see the Court of Owls come in. Yeah, that's from the first issue of it, which I had forgotten and someone tweeted me. But yeah, the like videotaping contact lenses. That was awesome.
That was sick.
And Batman rewatching his crimes every night, and he's like journaling, and he's like, I have to relive every night. The narration worked so well. It was badass. The Nirvana song, them using that twice. I thought that was just gonna be a trailer thing. I fucking love that they used the movie. Yeah,
it's perfect. And dude, how cool! I can't believe no one ever thought of this. How cool is the contact lens, like not detective?
That's what you're saying. Yeah, the videoing it, right?
Yeah, I thought that was so unique and cool the way that was added, and that felt like something from the Arkham games.
It just like I think Robbie said it. Great cast. I think everybody fit well. I mean, the casting in this movie was awesome. There was nobody who I thought felt out of place. The nightclub scenes were great.
Speaking of which, you want to hear something crazy? I looked up the soundtrack after the movie. One of the featured songs was by Bauer, the guy that made the Harlem Shake.
Harlem Shake.
Oh, I think you're talking about Kyle.
No,
not
the Harlem
friend,
Shake guy had a featured song on this.
Unreal.
I think unfortunately it's, if you want it to be perfect, I don't think it is, but I think that's fine. I think it was unreal. I actually thought that I might like it less the second time. I thought I might have been prisoner of the moment, and I did drop it by a point, but I mean that's splitting hairs because I'm comparing it to other again, it was right there, it was above. I was like, do I really think it's better than Logan? And that's how I kind of like when I start to get really like the minutia of ranking movies, like, no, I think Logan, I think smoother movie by a hair. But man, I cannot wait for more of these. I cannot wait for the spinoffs. I think Pattinson, I would say, is I think the best Batman.
Yeah,
I like all the recent ones. I liked Bale as Batman, but I think the Batfleck was good too. But Pattinson is just money. Do you remember where we were when Pattinson was cast?
Yeah,
it was John Wick, right?
Was it? I don't know if it was 2 or 3.
I'm pretty sure it's done with 3. Parabellum.
With
because that was 2019
in the morning.
I think. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We were watching. We were watching John Wick Chapter 3 at the Dolby at AMC Lincoln Square in New York, and you. I think I leaned over to you. I went to the bathroom.
I think so.
I went to the bathroom and I saw a tweet, and I'm like, oh shit! And I leaned in. I said, yo. Robert Pattinson got cast as Batman just now. You were like, fuck. And you were like blogging like while we were, that timing was tough.
Yeah.
Timing was tough. Anyway, I don't think I have much of it. We covered a lot of things here. I think we'll throw the ending real quick where he has like the Riddler has his, I don't know, what's the best way to put it?
Conversation with his friend, with his best friend, his new friend. So let's go through the ending. Batman, they capture him. Batman goes to prison. They have a pretty cool prison like interrogation moment.
Yeah,
where the Riddler kind of loses his mind. Like, this isn't how it's supposed to end. I love that. I was like, man, I want like a Paul Dano unmasked moment. That we did get that. But then, like, I don't know, like what would you call it? Is it his people said like it's like the Riddler's like edge lord impersonators
It's
who show up.
incel army. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was fine. You know what I was worried it was going to be? I thought it was shit. What am I? Where does Batman? Oh, do you remember when? So in the Dark Knight,
right,
when they're in the tower and he ties everybody up and they all are hanging and they're dangling in there.
Yep.
I thought it was going to be too much like just end of the movie or like video game, like AI villains, just like picking them off one by one. And there was a little element to that, but I like that there was kind of one final Riddler, like fanboy that he had to go toe to toe with that almost killed him. And he had to kind of supercharge himself up. And then he said he was vengeance. I like that worked. That's kind of my point. I think the beginning of that, you're like, there's so many of them. Like, I don't know if this really like nails it for me after having the Riddler be the villain the whole movie, but I thought that wrapped up nice there. Did you guys have any issue with like the kind of final coterie within the coterie of villains of just
Coterie of villains.
People are crapping on it. I don't think it's that bad of a line. They're like five. He has 500 followers, but he's on the dark web, and he's
right.
Serial
500 murderers is a lot of
Like
murderers
very
to have at your
loyal.
disposal.
Yeah.
That's
I
a
don't-
lot of people.
People.
I didn't have an
people are
issue
like,
with
they're
that.
not
He would
making
get more than that. You know how hard it is to
Right.
go on social media?
They're not making a huge deal. They're not making a huge deal about it in a sense like that ruined the movie. But I'm like, I don't think that line was that crazy. It's like 500
Yeah.
serial killer fanboys in the dark web. Like that's a lot of people. That's kind of terrifying.
I love
And
the
how many
idea of the
showed up
Riddler.
at the end? Fucking 24 or something?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
If
I love
that,
the idea.
yeah.
I love the idea of like the Riddler trying to like grow his like YouTube subscriber count. He's like, God damn it, no one's subscribing. Everyone follows me on Twitter. No one will subscribe to the YouTube.
Yeah.
He's dying. I thought that ending was cool because in a sense, Batman did lose. Like Gotham was fucking destroyed.
Yeah.
Leveled. Like it was essentially like it was really, and a lot of people compared it to 7, and there's a lot of parallels to it. It is like 7, except almost as if at the end Brad Pitt doesn't kill Kevin Spacey. Like it's just like that's essentially the big difference there, and that's what, and hence the freak out by Paul Dano. And I thought that his like pure psychopathy in that moment was nuts. It was so well acted in that scene, and I think it worked perfectly. I liked their little tease of the Joker. I thought was cool, and obviously like it was Barry
Forgot to mention
playing
that.
him. Yeah, like he was cool. He has a great Joker laugh. I mean, that's a solid start if you want to be cast as a Joker. Great Joker laugh. He has a great look for that too. We actually talked about that, I think, in Eternals, in our screening of Eternals. Like he has a great like kind of evil vibe to him. And he, by the way, I didn't do the official count yet. I think there was 3 ex-Chernobyl actors in this movie. Like the 2 of the cops, one of the, like the lead cop guy with the beard was the naked miner from Chernobyl. The other guy,
really?
Yeah, and the other guy, the police captain that gets mad at Batman with the mustache, that's like the guy who runs the Chernobyl power plant that gets arrested. And then Barry Keoghan is when in I don't know how to pronounce his name if you're yelling at me and you're Irish. I'm sorry. He's like plays like one of the little Russian kids that has to go out and shoot all the dogs. Like there's a lot of Chernobyl actors in this. I don't know if there's some sort of casting director follow or carryover, but I don't know. Interesting.
This is where a lot of people have kind of the Batman Begins thing. It's like you have all these like henchmen show up. They destroy Gotham by like the big villain, and then they literally tease the Joker. I could have done without the Joker tease. Like it doesn't bother me, but like I didn't need it. I will say I do hope he's not the villain in the next movie. I don't want the Joker yet in this.
I don't think he will be.
You don't think he will be? I think he's in Arkham.
Yeah.
I don't think he will be either. And it's been teased. I really want Mr. Freeze.
Yeah,
Like,
Man, me
Freeze.
too, dude.
Yeah.
It's time, isn't it?
He was apparently like, right? Did everyone see that he was apparently like pointedly referenced in this movie, and they cut it out. I really, really want Mr. Freeze.
They also cut another
It would be
Joker scene
incredible.
from this movie, which actually sounds cool. Matt Reeves said he cut a scene where Batman was so unnerved with the Riddler targeting him that he went to visit the Joker almost as if he was Hannibal Lecter and he needed like information on another serial killer. So there's a scene, he said they'll put it out and everything, where he sits down and it's like dimly lit room, and the Joker is not the Joker yet. He's not calling himself the Joker or anything. He's just got this condition where he can't stop smiling. Like his face is permanently like contorted into its smile. And he said that was going to be a scene where you could tell that Batman was the one that locked him up in his first year. And people are even saying that Matt Reeves said that the Gotham PD show has now evolved into like an Arkham Asylum show.
Yeah.
So people are saying maybe the Joker is going to be kind of for that. And Matt Reeves said, I want to make it clear this is not a tease for the sequel. He's like, I'm not saying the Joker is going to be in the second movie. He just wanted to show that. And he said that's why it wasn't a post-credit scene, because it's not a tease. He's like, I just wanted to show that Batman thinks, this is the way to make Gotham better. No, Gotham is going to continue to be fucked up, and Gotham is still like completely wrecked. But I agree, Mr. Freeze is kind of the villain who I wanted to see for a while. Heart of Ice is one of the best animated series episodes forever. Like, do that character right, and it'll be amazing.
There's been so much tease to it, right? Like they said they cut it out. And I imagine typically when something like that gets cut out, it's because they just want to save the moment for when he really is there. So like I would be awesome.
Yeah, I want to just add to that last scene, we're talking about Barry K. Let's call him. I don't know. I'll learn his name here real soon. But I thought I would not like that scene. Because to me, that sequel tease at the end of Batman Begins, I get chills every time I watch it. And when he turns that card over, I feel like you're trying to recapture lightning in a bottle. But here's what excites me. And it's something that no other Batman films have really dealt with in the past. You kind of have villain A, villain B, and that's your movie. But I don't think if we get the Joker again, I don't think it's going to be a Joker movie like Batman 89 or The Dark Knight or obviously Joaquin Phoenix. I think what they're setting up is this idea that Gotham is a city filled with crazies that are in Arkham. And the animated series did such a great job of this, of what happens when all of them come together and try to destroy the city. I think we'll get the Joker as a villain at some point in the series, but I think the whole idea of him being front and center the way Nicholson or Ledger was, I don't think that'll happen. I think it'll be more of an ensemble thing. And for that reason, I am really excited because I think in many ways you've kind of done everything you can in live action with that character. But that guy's a great actor. He was great in Chernobyl. He's one of my few things in Eternals I really, really liked. So
Barry Kogan, by the way, I looked it up. Barry
Kogan.
Kogan.
Okay. Too.
There it
Kogan,
is.
Yeah.
But,
I believe you say it like Kyon, though. I heard someone say it recently, and I was like, what the fuck?
I'm looking at it on the pronounced whatever Irish actor says Barry Kogan.
Okay.
Sticking with it.
Well, he's the Joker now. So I'm looking forward to where you're going. I'm with you, Jeff. Like
Jack Napier.
This totally put an end to the idea of this movie that like Jim Carrey was actually the Riddler and not just Ace Ventura pretending to be the Riddler. And I hope now this series needs to be a series that just rights the wrongs of the Schumacher movies. Let's bring Mr. Freeze in. Mr. Freeze out after the Joker is like in my top 2 or 3 favorite Batman villains. So I'm with you. And especially seeing what they did with the Riddler here.
Yeah.
Like what they could do with Mr. Freeze, making him like.
And also there's a flood in Gotham now. So like you could do something with, you know, how do we freeze the water to, make it into.
Said you can ice skate on it like they did in other movies.
Yes, right. Some weird shit like that. Like there's definitely stuff that you can tease. There's a no district attorney now. So obviously Harvey Dent may come.
I bet we're going to get that too. At least a tease of it. Yeah.
There's so many little things like that. Where it's like the open world is out there now. I mean, Killer Croc could be out in the, sewage at this point. Like, who the hell knows?
And I think the spinoff series are going to be a huge part of that. Just reintroducing or introducing new villains into this universe. Yeah.
Final scores: Robbie 95, myself 93, Ken Jack 91, Chris 86. Definitely one of the better comic movies ever released. I think in all of our opinions here. Awesome stuff. The Batman.